Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Throwing in the Towel. Each week I dive deep into the NFL season and make the tough call on which team it's time to give up on. Whether it's due to a string of injuries, a losing streak, or just plain bad luck, some teams just don't have what it takes to make it to the postseason. And in this week 10 episode, I'll be throwing in the towel on team number 10. So make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end to see which team that is. And per usual, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more weekly NFL insights. Let's go ahead and jump right into the action, starting with the AFC East, which has no representatives this week. The towel's been thrown in on the Jets and the Patriots, and the Bills and Dolphins got wins. Now we move on to the AFC North, which has a lone representative in the Cincinnati Bengals, and the loss to the Ravens may have been the straw that broke this team's back. The problem for Cincinnati is their defense, a defense that allowed the Ravens to do essentially anything they wanted and convert over half of their third down attempts. The Bengals aren't out of the playoff race just yet, but Cincinnati now has no margin for error, and the odds of a late surge from a flawed team aren't good. I don't think Cincinnati wins the division, but they might be able to sneak into the postseason, might sneak in as a wild card. They are on the outside looking in though. AFC South, we have the Colts and the Texans this week, and for the Colts, when they benched Anthony Richardson in favor of Joe Flacco, it was because the team thought the veteran gave them a better chance to win now. 2 weeks in and the results aren't promising. The Colts aren't positioned any better to win with Flacco behind center. Shane Steichen may have reiterated that Flacco is still the starter, but no one will blame him for changing course and going back to Anthony Richardson. Bare minimum, Richardson provides athleticism and playmaking ability as a scrambler and a runner, which is more than what Flacco can offer because he's just a statue in the pocket. Also, Indianapolis needs to do something to get this franchise rejuvenated, and Flacco just isn't cutting it. And for the Texans, at halftime of Sunday night's game against the Lions, it appeared that the Texans were on the verge of a statement win. The Lions couldn't stop turning the ball over, Jared Goff especially, with 5 interceptions. Houston would go into intermission with a 23-7 lead. However, it was not to be for the Texans on that night, and what should be viewed as an embarrassing night for the Texans, well, they did have one bright spot, and that was John Mechie's performance, which deserves plenty of attention. Mechie could fill a vital role as the season progresses. Despite the loss, the Texans still have a strong grasp of the AFC South, having swept their only competition, that being the Colts. Mechie can provide C.J. Stroud with a legitimate third target at wide receiver, alongside Tank Dell and Nico Collins when Collins returns from injury, which hopefully for the Texans isn't that far away. And lastly, in the AFC West, we have the Denver Broncos, and this loss to the Chiefs may haunt them for a while. They gave the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions all they could handle, and as the clock wound down, all they needed was a 35-yard field goal to seal the win. Unfortunately for them, Leo Chenette blocked that field goal, and while there's no denying that the Broncos are improved relative to where they were in 2023, at 5-5 they are on the fringes of postseason contention. Give some respect to this team, they certainly earned it after they came within a game-winning field goal of beating the Chiefs. Denver, despite the loss, should be encouraged by its ability to hang with AFC heavyweights as Bo Nix continues to show promise. I think they are still on the inside of the playoff picture, but this is a team very well positioned despite a loss. So now we move to the Division Representatives this week, which okay, I guess I just gave away who's the AFC representative, but as you can see, we've got the Bengals in the North, the Colts in the South, and the Broncos in the West. And as you just saw, of these 3 teams, I picked the Colts to represent the AFC this week. Now we move on to the NFC side of things, starting with the NFC East, which has the Commanders and the Cowboys. And for the Cowboys, things have gone officially from bad to worse for this team. The bad was losing Dak Prescott to a hamstring injury that will end his season. Worse was the Cooper Rush-led offense that amassed 146 total yards, 6 points, and 5 turnovers. At 3-6, with Dak Prescott done for the year, the team simply just doesn't have enough to compete on a weekly basis. Cooper Rush and Trey Lance, well, they're left to play out the season as best as they can. And then against the Eagles, they both combined for 66 passing yards, which is just rough. Dallas's run game isn't good enough to carry the offense, and even with Micah Parsons back in the lineup, their defense isn't going to be able to win enough games to save the season for the Cowboys either. It looks like Mike McCarthy is on his way out. And for the Commanders, this Week 10 was a litmus test for this team, a matchup against one of the hottest teams in the AFC and the Steelers ahead of a critical NFC East showdown with the Eagles. After rolling through opponents much of the season, the Washington offense stumbled in Week 10. Jaden Daniels had made everything look so easy early in his rookie season, but he struggled against the Steelers as they brought their trademark pressure, made him uncomfortable, and didn't allow him to break out outside of structure to create big plays. Now, not everyone has the personnel to slow Daniels in the same manner. However, the outcome shows that teams can slow down this offense and contain the talented single caller. I do expect him to bounce back, though. In the NFC North, we have a lone representative of the Chicago Bears. And remember when the Bears hit the bye week at 4-2 and looked like a team that could be a real factor in the postseason? Yeah, Pepper Farm remembers. I remember too. And since then, the Bears have imploded offensively. They went into the Week 7 bye on a 3-game winning streak and, well, seemingly left their ability to win and score in the off week, as Chicago's now lost 3 consecutive games, and Caleb Williams is taking a step backwards after showing some promise early on in October. Williams has been inaccurate and under constant duress, but offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, well, he took the blame for that as he was fired from his job. But the Bears are still a flailing team, and they're going to need more answers other than just firing the offensive coordinator. NFC South, we have the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and for the Buccaneers, there are only so many injuries that a team can sustain before things start falling apart, and the Buccaneers appear to have hit that point. Tampa Bay might be the most dangerous team with a losing record in the NFL this season, despite experiencing numerous key injuries, with Tristan Wirfs being the latest, and having a below-average defense. The Buccaneers just don't know how to go away quietly. And I think a lot of that can be chalked up to the underdog mentality of Baker Mayfield that just gives this team that necessary edge to remain competitive in these types of games. And the Week 11 bye gives Tampa a chance to get players like Wirfs and Mike Evans back in the lineup. This is a team that could still very well make its way into the postseason. I don't see them winning the division, but I think the postseason is very realistic and very likely. And for the Falcons, they are good enough to win the NFC South. Though perhaps only because of Tampa Bay's injuries, which they certainly took advantage of to sweep the Buccaneers. However, the Falcons aren't good enough to win consistently when Kirk Cousins isn't playing at his best, or when Raheem Morris decides to settle for field goals is okay when your kicker has struggled with his accuracy all season. Defensively, Atlanta's lack of a reliable pass rush continues to be a major liability, which makes their inability to add a sack artist at the trade deadline, well, a major mistake. That's what it looks like. And lastly, in the NFC West, we have the Los Angeles Rams as a lone representative. And just when you think the Rams were getting it all together and getting healthy and about to go on a run, the offense lays an egg at home. The Rams have one thing going for them right now, and that is that the NFC West is packed tight with all 4 teams having 4 or 5 losses. The defense played relatively well in Week 10 too, but there is too much talent on this Rams offense for the team to be settling for 5 field goals. Lean more on the run game, use quicker passes to compensate for the offensive line deficiencies. Just do something to take advantage of this window that you have. So with that, we move on to the NFC Division Representatives, which feature the Cowboys, the Bears, the Buccaneers, and the Rams. And of these 4 teams, who is representing the NFC this week? Well, I think your choices are pretty narrowed down to either the Cowboys or the Bears. And between those 2 teams, I went with the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC. So that's your Super Bowl matchup for this week: the Colts in the AFC versus the Cowboys in the NFC. And before we get to this week's team, we must, as per usual, do the recap. Panthers got a nice little win in Munich to go into their bye week. The Giants appear to be finally moving on from Daniel Jones, well, at least benching him anyway. The Titans, Will Levis played a pretty decent game against the Chargers, still lost, but I don't think he threw an interception. The Jaguars, well, still as inept as on offense, even with Mac Jones under center. Credit to the defense, though. They certainly showed up in that game. The Patriots, nice little win over the Bears, but Drake May certainly could use a legitimate wide receiver. No disrespect to the guys that they have, but they're not scaring any defenses. The Browns and Raiders were on a bye, and the Raiders are probably going to have Desmond Ridder as their quarterback coming out of it. The Jets, bad loss to the Cardinals there too. Aaron Rodgers looked washed in that game. And the Saints got a nice little win for their interim head coach, so at least he can say he won one game. I don't think it's enough to turn around the season, but it was a feel-good moment. And so we move on to this week's team, which is the Dallas Cowboys. And there's a lot of pressure, I feel like, put on this team, maybe more so than other teams. And I think the media coverage is a problem with this team. I just think the Cowboys get talked about too much. And so when things go awry, the noise gets very loud. And I also don't think it helps when you have an owner who's also the GM and does things that other teams don't do, like facility tours and building a stadium where the sun is absolutely shining so bright into the stadium that players legitimately cannot see the football. And yeah, like I said, when they play bad too, so just not a very good season, not a very situation for Dallas. It always gets loud when they lose. And this season, it's just going to get louder and louder and louder. And now with Dak Prescott done, that pretty much does it for this team. They are pretty much, I would say, they're done at this point too. And Mike McCarthy, I don't anticipate him getting fired during the season, but I could certainly understand him just playing on his contract and then the Cowboys just moving on from there. That's really all they can do at this point, is just move on from the head coach, because they paid Dak Prescott, so they're clearly not moving on from him. But it is time to throw in the towel on the Dallas Cowboys. And that does it for this week's episode of Throwing in the Towel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.